guys, welcome to my channel. This is at Common Questions. So today we'll be answering common questions about the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. This is the spelling and pronunciation of it. So I'm getting answers from a website called the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. I believe it is a .gov as usual. Because this is a government sourced source. So the first question we have is, what is that? What is the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease? And so it says here that the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD, is a rare degenerative fatal brain disorder. It affects about one person in every 1 million per year worldwide. In the United States, there are about 350 cases a year, which is a lot. So CJD usually appears in later life and runs a rapid course. Typical onset of symptoms occurs about age 60, and about 70% of individuals die within literally 1 year. In the early stages of this disease, people may have failing memory, behavioral changes, lack of coordination, lack of muscle coordinations, which we'll talk about later in another question that we have. Let's see, as the illness progresses, mental deterioration becomes pronounced, and involuntary movements, blindness, weakness, other symptoms that are caused by this disease. CJD belongs to a family of human and animal disease and is known as the transmissible spongiform encephalopathies. Encephalopathies, or prion diseases, is a big word right there. So yeah, that's what it is, and that's where it comes from in its roots. So our next common question is how it can affect you. How can this disease affect you? And it says, although sporadic TSE includes 5 distinct subtypes of sporadic CJD and sporadic fatal insomnia, overall they are characterized by rapidly progressive dementia. Initially, individuals experience problems with muscle coordination, personality changes, and impaired vision. People with this disease, especially with FFI, which is also another kind of disease that is related to CJD, also may experience insomnia, depression, or unusual sensations in certain parts of their body. As the illness progresses, people's mental impairment becomes severe. They often develop involuntary muscle jerks, like spasms, maybe, for example, or kind of related to Tourette's. Jerks called myoclonus, and they may go blind eventually. They eventually lose the ability to move and speak, kind of like paralysis, and enter a coma. Pneumonia and other infections often occur in these individuals and can lead to death progressively. So that's the effects of CJD. Another question that has been asked a lot is, what is the cause of this disease and how does it get to people and make them have it? Current scientific consensus maintains that abnormal forms of normal cellular proteins called prions, as we mentioned earlier, cause CJD in people and TSE in animals. The normal harmless prion is usually designated PRPC, C stands for cellular, and the abnormal infectious form, which causes the disease, is PRPSC. SC stands for the prototypical prion disease, scrapie. Proteins are long chains of amino acids. Obviously, we all learned that in the early years of biology, like in high school and middle school. We learned that proteins are long chains of amino acid and have to fold together into a unique shape or conformation to gain function in cells. So research findings indicate that the infectious prion originates from a normal protein that we have in our body, and whose conformation has changed to one that causes the disease. The normal prion protein is found throughout the body, but is most abundant in the nervous system. So that's the brain system and all the nerves you have in your body that send messages up to your brain. Its overall role is not fully understood. It is believed that the harmless to infectious protein conformational change is common to all major forms of human prion disease, including CJD. In the acquired form of the disease, the PRPSC comes from the outside of the body For example, through contaminated meat, as seen in VCJD, and other, things that you could be prone to. Then it clings to and changes the conformation of the normal prion protein of the host and progressively spreads in a domino-like fashion towards the brain, where it causes lesions. So those are the causes of this disease, which could be you could be prone to something, or it's just something happening in your body with the proteins. So another very good question that has been asked is how it's transmitted. So we were kind of talking about this in the causes. This is kind of the same question, but it's a little bit, it depends on who it's being asked to. But CJD cannot be transmitted through the air or through touching most or other forms of casual contact, like a high five or a handshake, like, physical contact that people talk about, how your germs are transmitted. That is not a way that CJD is transmitted. Spouses and other household members of people with sporadic CJD have no higher risk of contracting the disease than the general population. However, exposure to brain tissue and spinal cord fluid from infected persons could be avoided to prevent transmission of the disease through these materials. In some cases, CJD has spread to other people from grafts of dura mater, which is a tissue that covers the brain, and transplanted corneas, implantation of inadequately sterilized electrodes in the brain, and injections of contaminated pituitary growth hormone derived from human pituitary glands taken from cadavers, which are dead bodies. Doctors call these cases that are linked to medical procedures iatrogenic cases. Since 1985, all human growth hormone used in the United States has been synthesized to recombinant DNA procedures, which eliminates a risk of transmitting CJD by this route. So the general main idea of the transmission is usually something that happens in your spinal cord and brain tissue, and kind of the messages that have been sending. And as in the last question of the causes, it has something to do with the proteins as well. And another question that is very, very, very vague and very, people ask it a lot for any kind of disease, which is how is it treated? How is it treated? And how can it be treated? Can it be cured? So it says here, according to the website we were citing this, it says currently there is no treatment that can cure or control CJD, although studies of a variety of drugs are now in progress. Current treatment for CJD is aimed at easing symptoms and making the person as comfortable as possible. Opiate drugs can help relieve pain if it occurs, and the drugs clonazepam, weird word, and sodium valproate may help relieve myoclonus, I apologize. During later stages of the disease, intravenous fluids and artificial feeding may also be used. So, obviously it said that there's no current treatment. They are researching it right now. And the next question kind of has to do with that. It says, what research is taking place? So the research that's taking place is by the website. The website is, the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, or in other words, NINDS. It says the mission of NINDS is to seek fundamental knowledge of the brain and nervous system, and to use that knowledge to reduce the burden of neurological disease. So this is kind of the main idea of what they're trying to do. The NINDS is a component of the National Institutes of Health, NIH, the leading supporter of biomedical research in the world. Other NIH institutes, including the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and the National Institute on Aging, also conduct research on other human and animal prion diseases and trying to discover factors that influence prion infectivity and transmission. So they're researching the transmission, like what I was explaining in like 2 questions ago. They're still researching, they're still learning, and how the disorder damages the brain. For example, researchers are investigating cellular mechanisms involving in abnormal prion formation and accumulation, as well as their replication by select cellular subsets in the brain. Other projects are examining how abnormal prions cross the protective blood-brain barrier and spread throughout the central nervous system, and tests that measure the biological activity of prions. Findings may identify new therapeutic targets to treat prion diseases. So, that is what's happening. That's the research that's taking place, and this is kind of concluding the whole, the whole explanation of what CJD, I'm sorry. And, they're still researching on how to cure it, and we kind of know a lot now. So, thank you for watching. This is Common Questions with Sarah, and I hope you guys watch my next video. Bye.